All right. Good evening, my friends and family and cohorts. Welcome to another edition of Unscripted on the All Sports, All Plays Network. Lots of things are going on in the world of sports, lots of things to talk about. And what a time it is to be alive, my friends. Start at the top, you got your boy, Big Shot Rob, out there in the upstate New York area. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. I just want us to say happy election day to all. Hope you got out there and voted. We never like to get political on the show and take sides, but I do hope that everybody out there got out there and voted and is about to go out there and vote. Happy election day.
Absolutely. Hey, that's right, man. Today is election day. What a time. What a time. My boy, Stat Guy, the guy that literally knows all stats. I swear he's got a computer for a brain. Stat Guy, Dustin Reese. How you doing, brother?
Good, Jay. Good, Jay. How are you?
Hey, I'm wonderful, man. Wonderful day. Wonderful day. I got to go see my son over there at Georgia Southern University. He's part of the choir and band. He's a music guy. And they had a nice performance out there. And Blue didn't act up. He was quiet. So what a day, man. As always, we got a special guest, Jonah Karp. I know some people may have heard of some people. He's up there in correct me if I'm wrong, the Hartford, Connecticut area.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, with FOX61 News Team, and you do the sports, correct?
That's correct.
Man, what a time! And so, are you a Buffalo Bills fan? Who is your team of fancy?
I'm a New York Jets fan.
Hey!
Oh, wow.
Hey, that's awesome. We don't get a lot of Jets fans on here. You guys got a hell of a team this year, huh?
It's awesome this year. Ask me any other year after 2010, I would have a different answer. But yeah, this year it's a little bit different.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, Jeremy Green, he does ESPN out there in the Asheville, Carolina area, and he's another avid Jets fan, and he pretty much had the same reaction, I think, as you do. And I think a lot of people across the country are not understanding number one, how young this Jets team is. And I think as we go forward in the next couple of seasons, as they get more and more mature and a couple more draft picks, free agents, I mean, this is going to be a team to deal with.
So what's crazy is that we just beat the Bills, and we don't even have our best offensive weapon in Breece Hall. He's out for the year. Talk about a young talent. He's going to be a stud. Hopefully he comes back and is 90% of what he was this season. This guy's going to be a stud for the next 15 years. This is a New York Jets team that is loaded with young talent. And it's very exciting.
Yeah, and don't forget, a lot of times we overlook even what Michael Carter is bringing to this team in the lieu of Breece Hall going down. They've just brought in Robinson. I wasn't a big fan of that trade, but I thought Carter was doing just fine on his own. But again, man, phenomenal job. Salah, I forget how you say his name. I think it's Salah. The phenomenal job he's doing. Salah. Okay,
Salah.
I thought it was Salah, but I hear some people say Salah. I always wonder if I'm saying it wrong. But again, you look at the Jets O-line. They brought in some guys, and then they've had guys go down with injury on the offensive line. But yet these guys still find a way to keep it together. And Sauce Gardner, for the love of Christ, and now I know why they call him Sauce.
Yeah, Sauce is something else in the secondary. And I was one of those who, when the Jets drafted Breece Hall, I was like, well, we have so many holes on this team. Running back is not one of them. Michael Carter had a pretty good year last year. We had so many other holes that need to be filled. Wide receiver, I mean, you name it. And we got Garrett Wilson in the draft, and we're stocking up on offensive linemen. And we had a revolving door in the last few seasons, but one guy goes down. We brought in Dwayne Brown, and he's been awesome. This team is just loaded with talent, and everyone sort of overlooked them based on the history of the Jets.
Absolutely. So I got a couple of things I want to talk about before we get into the show. Number one, obviously, Brady hit finally the 100,000 yards with that 15-yard reception in the comeback win over the Rams, which was a 43rd career fourth quarter comeback to tie Peyton Manning. I mean, it's just incredible. Rob Scott What is your or Rob Scott? I'm sorry, got too many Robs in my life. Rob Strike, Big Shot Rob. What was your thought process when you saw Brady hit that big milestone? I mean, is it just an accolade and it's not as big a shock because of all that Brady has done, for crying out loud?
Yeah, it's amazing, man. I mean, he got to 100,000 yards. I mean, that's a feat that's never been accomplished before by any quarterback in, NFL history. I believe the comeback he had was, I think it was his 69th comeback. I'm not sure if it was 43rd. It might have been 43rd, fourth quarter, but 69th comeback in a game, like, overall. And, yeah, I mean, Brady, he looks like he's down and out of it, and then, he just comes back and wins games, And his post-game conference was definitely interested. And, he said, this is awesome. It's fucking awesome. And the Bucks, maybe this will help them gain their momentum next couple games. I mean, they got a tough game this week against the Seahawks. It's going to be out in Munich, Germany. So all the fans out there are going to get to see Tom Brady and obviously the Seahawks. Buccaneers should be a good game. I believe it's on NFL Network, 9:30 this Sunday.
Yeah.
So that looks to be a good game.
Let's be honest, Rob. It wasn't. I guess it wasn't too much to give up Giselle when you got 100,000-yard mark to hit. Huh? I guess for Tom, it wasn't too much to give up, right?
Nah, man, not at all, man. I think Tom will. I think he'll stay single for a while, probably, and focus on the rest of the season, and then maybe he'll explore love like after the season or something. I'm sure a lot of girls would throw themselves at him. So, but I think he's going to focus on football for now, and then see what happens by the end of this year, and then decide what he wants to do with his career moving further.
Yeah, absolutely. I would not be surprised if at the end of this year he hangs it up and probably does take that lucrative deal and become a broadcaster with one of the networks. I know that he signed on with one. That's interesting, Mr. Karp, Jonah. You look at Odell Beckham. That's another hot topic in the NFL world. I mean, everybody wants him now. Out of his own mouth, he has said Cowboys, Giants, and it was one other team. Was it the Bills? I believe it was one other team in there. I think it was the Vikings that was in there. Either way, I think he wants a 3 to 4 year deal. He's tired of living out of a suitcase. We know he said that. We know that Jerry Jones has publicly come out and said, "Hey, it would look good if he put on that star helmet." He has ties to Von Miller out there in Buffalo. We know Buffalo is another hot spot. We've seen him in the sidelines in their games. Where do you see Odell Beckham going? Like, out of all the teams, where do you ultimately see him signing?
If any team offers him a multi-year deal, he's going to go. If I'm a general manager, I don't think I would offer Odell a multi-year deal unless it was for a bargain of a price. But this is a guy coming off an ACL tear. Why would you offer him anything else other than a prove it to me 1 year deal? That wouldn't make any sense to me. I mean, we know what he could do on the field, but he's also, is he 30 years old yet? He's
right at about 30, 29, 30. He's right in that transitional mark.
So if you're a 30-year-old wide receiver and you're coming off a season-ending injury, we don't know what you can do now. So why, if I'm building a team, especially a contending team, why would I add you to the mix for another 4 years? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense to a lot of people. Again, the 1 year deal, unless I've said this before, I probably might give him a multi-year, but the contract language probably would be to his liking, because you've got to imagine they've got to have some precautionary clauses in there with that type of contract. And I think if Jerry's smart, he would have them in there if he does give him a long term, to where if he does have those injuries, there got to be some outs for the Cowboys or whatever team gives him a long-term deal. And that's just because of the history. Stat guy. I'm gonna switch over to another one real quick, and then we're gonna get into the show. People are strongly urging Governor Cho's side not to hire Udaka as the next Nets coach. And he's been widely sought after by the Nets to come over there. And again, the reasons that they're citing is, well, the improper language to females in the workplace, We know he's had an affair with one of the females in the workplace. And so they're urging the governor not to bring him in as the next coach. Me personally, I'm going to have a sit down with Udoka in the interview process. I'm probably going to talk to him about the issues that he had gone through and how he can assure me that it wouldn't come here. And then what his plan would be to turn around a very dysfunctional franchise. But what do you think about Udoka? Do you think that Cy will listen to those, urging him not, or do you think he will bring in Udoka to the Brooklyn Nets?
Is that going to me, Jay?
Absolutely, unless somebody else is named Stat Guy.
No, I don't see any scenario where Ime Udoka is not given the Brooklyn job, mainly because he was one of the top 2 finalists the last time that job was open. And ultimately, he ended up going to Boston, and Steve Nash went to Brooklyn, so this isn't the first time that Udoka's been linked to that Brooklyn Nets job. People need to remember, he was not suspended by the NBA. He was only suspended by the Boston Celtics, so it's not like he has to sit out for an extended period of time. He only has to sit out basically until him and the Celtics come to some sort of agreement on his contract, and once they say you're good to go do your own thing, Brooklyn can bring him in tomorrow if that happened tonight. He's exactly the type of coach that I think Brooklyn needs in terms of getting Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, and all these guys on the same page, because you look at how slow of a start the Celtics got off to last year, and all of a sudden once January hit, they were the best team in the NBA the second half of the season. I think he can do the same thing with Brooklyn, even though it might not be this year, just because I don't know when he would be allowed to actually coach. But he's going to be a great coach if he goes to Brooklyn, and I think Brooklyn's going to be an instant contender if he's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, and I totally agree with you. Rob, I know you're kind of up in the New York area and things like that. So this has. Yeah. What is your thought process on side? Do you think that they need to keep going after Udoka, even though his past transgressions?
Yeah, I mean, what he did with the Boston Celtics was great last year, getting to the NBA Finals. I actually thought they were going to win that championship against the Warriors. Obviously, they lost the series. They lost game 6 at home in Boston. But I do think highly of Ime Udoka. It's unfortunate what happened with Boston, with him and the personnel there, with the woman who was involved. But yeah, I'd like to see him, get back into coaching. Hopefully, coach the Nets. I think he would be a good coach for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and to get that team motivated and playing well for the rest of the season if he were to coach. But I mean, we just don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, again, it's incredible to me. And again, Jonah, I know you're, like I said, you're in the Connecticut, so you're kind of all in that same tri-state area. What's your thought process on Udoka? I mean, is it a good thing to hire him, or should they be reluctant about that?
Well, Ime Udoka is clearly a talented coach. That's indisputable. The challenge with the Brooklyn Nets is all the big name personalities, and I say all of the big names, meaning Kyrie and KD, and who knows what's going to happen with Kyrie ultimately. But the challenge is lassoing everybody and making sure that you get everybody in check to the point where they work together as a team. The Nets are a losing team right now. So whoever is brought in to coach this squad needs to turn them around. And that's a challenge when you have stars who didn't listen to a former star in Steve Nash
absolutely.
enough to win basketball games. The level of expectation right now for the Brooklyn Nets is an NBA championship. They have not sniffed that since Kyrie and KD got there, and James Harden got there, and now Ben Simmons is there. There is star power on this team, but they're not winning basketball games. That's a problem for whoever ends up being the coach.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's funny because you got a dysfunctional team. You got a coach coming in from a dysfunctional ending. Wow. I mean, all I can say is, at least I will say one thing about the Brooklyn Nets. They are consistent at being inconsistent. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. Jonathan Mathis, our boy Jonathan just joined us. We also got Gonzo from Gonzo's Sports Room just joined us. Of course, they're about, I don't know, 20 minutes late. Don't worry, I'll take it off your paycheck, but you don't get a paycheck, so we'll take it some other kind of way. No, hey, we're going to get into the show now. We're not really going to talk about the Astros winning the World Series. That's kind of played out. We're several days into it now. It's old news. Still incredible feat for those guys. What I want to talk about now is life after the World Series that the Astros just won. After that. And again, if you know one thing about I'll say one thing about the Astros. Come game, and this I did not know this. I actually read this today. When it was game 3 and they lost game 3 and the Astros were down 2-1 in Philadelphia. This was right after the 7-0 crushing that Philadelphia put on the Astros. Brantley came into the locker room. Now, if you don't know about Michael Brantley, he's a Houston Astro, but he has not played at all this postseason. He missed the majority of the regular season due to injury. He may not play part of next season as the injury lingers a little bit as they're repairing it and things of that nature. But what he did was he brought something to that team that they desperately needed coming off that 7-0 drubbing, and they still got 2 more games to play in Philly. Or is it 1? Yeah, 2 more games to play in Philly. He said to them, guys, just go out there and play Houston Astro baseball. Don't let that 7-0 drubbing get you down. That's not what got you here. You are the best team in baseball. You just have to reorganize yourself and reprioritize and gather yourself back up, and let's go out there and win. And he gave them, I'm sure, a lot more verbiage than just that. But that was what they basically came out and said that got them back into the series. And I say that to say this. When it comes to now the Astros free agency, they got 8 guys that they got to account for to bring back under the fold. Verlander's the biggest one. He's going to count $25 million as an opt-out, but his average market value is around the $41 million. So you got to imagine, $25 million, but it's going to be more than that if they want to bring him back another year. And then they still got Brantley to figure out. They got Gurriel to figure out. They got Vasquez, Mancini, Montero, and about 2 or 3 other off-the-wall guys that they had to bring. I think Litmus Diaz is in there as well. But the biggest one out of all that is, do you bring him back? Is Brantley. Now, again, like I said, Brantley's that emotional locker room guy that kept the Astros psychologically in the World Series. How would the Astros have done had Brantley not given that conversation is where I'm coming at. And how do you place a value on a guy that missed last season due to injury, but was crucial in the locker room going into game 4, and then he's going to miss part of next season? Do you give this guy, an extension, or do you keep him on, or do you say, hey, Brantley, nice, for what you contributed, but, we got other guys to do. So what, if you're the Astros, what are you going to do? Are you going to bring Brantley back, or do you move on from Brantley? And as our guest, I'm going to let Mr. Karp take that first question.
Well, I like Michael Brantley. I liked him when he was back with Cleveland. I think he finished 3rd in the MVP voting one year. Maybe that was like 2014. I mean, this guy is a real solid player, and I if there's one thing that can be said about the Houston Astros that's been proven true, is they can lose stars and still win games. I mean, who would have thought that they could lose Garrett Cole and George Springer and Carlos Correa and then win the World Series? Right. I mean, this is a team that knows how to fill holes. If they did lose Michael Brantley, I would still be confident, even with the Seattle Mariners having a lot of young talent. I don't think Oakland's doing anything anytime soon. The Angels always seem to be terrible. The Texas Rangers always seem to be terrible. So the AL West might be a toss-up between the Astros and Mariners next year, but if they lose Michael Brantley, I'm confident they'll be able to fill that hole, and they'll still be a contender regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do agree with what you're saying. And one of the things I was telling Gonzo about is that what keeps the Astros going is they have an incredible developmental staff in that minor league organization. So when they get players, they really know how to develop whatever talent it is they get. And I think that's why they were ushering in a guy like, Alvarez, Pena. But you got to look even before that. You got to look at Valdez. You got to look at Javier. And even before that, you got Bregman, Gurriel, Correa, Springer. All these guys came up to their farm.
Yeah.
You know, and all these guys were developed. So yeah, to your point, I think that's what's definitely keeping the Astros in the situation in which they're in, and why we can lose guys and not have it affect us as much as, let's say, the Yankees, who don't have as deep of a farm system, but you know, primarily.
Oh, Jay, the cat probably shut Jay down again.
Yeah, he'll be back on.
Yeah, he'll be back in just a second.
Must be the weather there in Georgia. I know they're getting hit by a hurricane soon down in Florida, so I don't know if it's going to affect Georgia or not. It's possible it might.
Oh, there he is.
There you go.
Right
Well,
there.
we put the button on the left, and the button on the left is the ejection button. So I don't know if that's God telling me something or the wife.
Jay, I just figured it was your cat shutting you. I just figured it was your cat shutting you down again.
Hey, no, it ain't the cat. It's that left thumb. But no. So yeah, I agree with that. My question is, to your question, I guess, Donzo, we're gonna start at the top. We're gonna ask a series of questions, and it's all different teams that we're gonna talk about, and we'll get it kicked off there. But I'm gonna care with the Astros. You know, since they are now the reigning champion, can they repeat, or do you see another team out there that can prevent that? AL side, NL side, or even both sides, like either in the World Series and win.
I think it's hard to say right this second until you see what happens in free agency here in a few weeks, and who they re-sign, what players go where's Aaron Judge end up at. I mean, if the Astros can keep most of that team together with that pitching staff that they have, especially if they can keep their pitching, they'll be right there again, because that was their strength this year, was their pitching more than anything. But like I said, it just depends on who all they can sign. Like you said, they have Verlander as a free agent. There's quite other. What'd you say? Eight players. So, I mean,
there's like 8 players at a free agency right now.
So I mean, I think they'll have a chance. It's hard to say until here in a few weeks after we see where all the free agents end up.
Yeah, I definitely, and again, I agree with you totally on that. And that's why, in my opinion, I think we can get back, but it's going to be, number one, can they keep some of those key components together, like a Verlander? Really, you know, a guy like Vasquez, who was very instrumental with the pitching, that kept those guys, you know, in check. So yeah, there's still some questions to Astros. I personally, maybe I'm biased, but I do think they can at least get back to the ALCS at the least. We'll see what happens. Verlander, does Verlander come back? I'll ask Mr. Karp, what do you think? Do the Astros bring back a guy like Verlander at his price tag, or do they bring up the young guy in Brown that pitched 2 starting games, and he went 2-0 in his 2 appearances with a .85 ERA and a 1.02 WHIP? So do you bring a guy like, and maybe bring him up in lieu of a Verlander?
Well, maybe Verlander's price dropped after he imploded in Game 1 of the World Series. That's possible.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think it would have been a better point had he not won the game that he did win, which was what, Game 5? Had he not won Game 5, I think he posted, because it would have been what, 0-7 in postseason. So yeah, that's crazy to think about, but it's true. Yeah. So stat guy, will Philly make it back to the World Series next year? We know that they have a number of free agents on the market, and they have said that Hoskins could be available via trade. We know that they have bullpen issues that they have to address. Can the Phillies make it back?
See, ultimately, the key to the Phillies is what they're going to do with the back end of the bullpen. Are they going to go and get a guy like Kenley Jansen, who's a free agent? Are they going to go and try to get some of these other free agent closers out there? Or are they just going to retain David Robertson, who even at 36 years old has still proven that he's a very valuable back end of the bullpen piece? But I'm just more curious to see how the team plays under Rob Thompson next year in his first full season as manager. When Joe Girardi got fired, that team was 7 games under 500. They made a managerial change, and with the exact same roster, he takes him 19 games above 500 the rest of the way. Now, if he did that in, 90 games, I think he was manager this year. If he does that in basically a half a season, you're looking at a team that goes 38 games above 500 if he was the manager for the full year. Not saying that's going to happen, but the Phillies finally started to look like the Phillies that everyone expected them to look like once he took over. So I'm very curious to see if what he kind of undiscovered in that second half carries over, because if that carries over to all of next season, they're going to be one of the favorites to come out of the National League again just because of that lineup, because they're going to have Nola, Ranger Suarez, and Wheeler still anchoring the top of that rotation.
Yeah, the biggest, like I said, the biggest thing for the Phillies has got to be that bullpen. You can't have Suarez, trying to be your closer and your starting pitcher when you hit the postseason. That's just not going to work for them. They've got to do something with that bullpen to help out that explosive offense and great, like you said, anchoring starting pitching that they have. That bullpen, and you saw it against the Braves, what the Astros did with the Braves when we had a terrible, terrible bullpen. Great offense, great starting pitching, terrible bullpen. And of course, you saw the outcome of that. The Braves did walk away with the win. So that's the same thing with the Phillies. They're the Astros of last year, where they just had no bullpen to really carry them to the promised land. Jonathan, I'm asking about the Yankees. I know you're a Dodgers guy, but I'm asking about these Yankees. Judge is obviously up for the mega contract. Rizzo's going to opt out. He's hoping that he can re-sign as a long-term deal with the Yankees. But can they bring Rizzo and Judge back, number one? They just got Severino under a pretty good contract to bring him back. They have issues in their rotation. They have issues in their bullpen. How do they bring a guy like Judge back? How do they bring a guy like Rizzo back? How do they address the needs of the bullpen? And then how do they address the needs of an aging lineup in LeMahieu, who's 34, Stanton is 33, and Donaldson, who's 37? How are the Yankees ever going to pull all this together and try to get to a World Series?
Well, the Yankees do have a large payroll, right? But they can't have the best of both worlds. They can't possibly bring back Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo. One of those guys are going to end up on another team if one does decide to stay and sign, long-term with the Yankees. I don't know if it's going to be Anthony Rizzo. I don't know if it's going to be Aaron Judge. Anthony Rizzo said that he's willing to spend the rest of his career, most likely, with the Yankees, that he's willing to sign a long-term deal, that he's committed to stand in New York. But will they give him that money, or will they prioritize Aaron Judge and try to bring him back? Or will they let Aaron Judge walk in free agency? Most likely Aaron Judge is looking into a new direction. Maybe he wants to play elsewhere. Maybe he wants to play with the Giants. Maybe he wants to come closer to home where he grew up. And maybe he wants to be in the Bay Area. So then they can prioritize for a guy like Anthony Rizzo, bring him back, but then you still got needs in the bullpen. You still got to address those needs as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Yankees do this offseason, how they play their cards, if they play their cards correctly, if they miss out on free agents because they're so concerned about keeping Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo. But this is what they should do. They should try to keep Aaron Judge, build around him, and look to see if they could sign some relievers, to a short-term deal maybe, see how it works out, and go from there. And that's what the Yankees should consider doing moving forward, so they can try to keep Aaron Judge, make him happy, finally pay him, make sure he secures the bag, while they also search for some quality arms on the market this year to try to address those bullpen needs.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. So Jonah, when we look at a guy like Judge, like Jonathan just talked about, and you look at the hefty price tag that he's going to bring, there's only honestly a handful of teams, maybe 3 or 4, that can bring a guy like that in on his price tag and still compete for a World Series. I would probably say Dodgers would be one. I would say not Padres, because Padres already got what they need, but definitely the Dodgers, probably San Francisco, and then probably staying with the Yankees. I think those are really the only teams because, and I don't think the Dodgers really need a guy like Judge, because what the Dodgers need is pitching. They got plenty of hitters. They just need some damn pitching. So do you see – I personally, in my opinion, I see Judge going to San Fran. I think San Fran's got the money to bring him in. I think they can still do some other things to formidify their team. He's a San Francisco guy. He's always been a San Francisco. That's where he grew up. But again, who can really bring in a guy like Aaron Judge and still be competitive if with all the other pieces you need to make a World Series team? Can you build a guy? I guess it was really coming down to is can you build a World Series team around Aaron Judge that requires so much money from your team?
Yeah, I think you're really looking at the East Coast and the West Coast. I think you have two on the East Coast, that's the Mets and Yankees, and you have two on the West Coast, that's the Giants and Dodgers. I don't see the Mets making much of a play. I think it would be real fun if the Mets and Yankees got into a bidding war for Aaron.
That'd be great.
If that happened, the Yankees would not lose because George Steinbrenner would be rolling over in his grave.
Yeah, he would. He would.
The Mets.
Yeah.
I think the next most likely team that Judge lands on outside of the Yankees would be the Giants. For all the reasons, Jonathan, you laid out already. It's his hometown. They can pay for him. There are pieces in place, albeit it's tough to contend in that division with the Dodgers and Padres both being powerhouses in the National League. But I can see the Giants paying for Aaron Judge, and quite honestly, that man is worth $400 million. If there's anybody right now in baseball who's worth a $400 million contract, it's Aaron Judge. Those are the four teams I think that could afford him, and I think the Giants could absolutely make a move.
And Jonah, the biggest thing for me is, when I've always thought of the Yankees, I've always thought of certain key players. The last one being, the one before it was Paul O'Neill, and then it was Derek Jeter, and now it was supposed to be Aaron Judge. Now, if Aaron Judge walks away and signs the bigger contract with the Giants, because the Yankees have already said they will not they will not try to outbid for him. In other words, the Giants personally came out and said nobody will outbid us for Judge. And the Yankees have said, okay, well, if the Giants are going to go that high, we're not going to try to match it. So I almost think they're willing to let the face of the franchise walk. And if that happens, then for the Yankees, I see that as, from a PR standpoint, is being catastrophic. Because now not only do you not have a World Series pennant, but now you don't have the face of your franchise, which everybody in the state of New York absolutely adores and loves. Every time I hear "All Rise," come on, that's the face of New York, and you're going to let him leave? I mean, if Aaron Judge leaves, how does that impact the Yankees?
It would impact them in something we haven't seen in decades, which is I think they'd be forced to enter a rebuilding phase. Aaron Judge is the cornerstone of that franchise. He is the reason they stayed afloat as long as they did this season, because the team was struggling and Aaron Judge was the one guy who stayed consistent with his bat. And even when they were winning games every day, they were managing to win a couple games every week because of Aaron Judge. That's how good this guy was this season. He is the literal definition of MVP in that, he has the stats, but this guy is as valuable as it comes in baseball. If they let him walk, they really should consider rebuilding.
Oh, God. Stat guy, could you ever imagine a time in your life that the word rebuild would be associated with the Yankees?
No, because it'll never happen. Yankees are one of those teams that's always going to spend money no matter who they lose. And when it comes to Aaron Judge, I don't think he's going to be back with the Yankees just because the Giants have already made it a point that they're not going to be outbid by anybody. Well, if you're going to publicly come out and say that you're not going to be outbid by anybody, you better make damn sure that you land Aaron Judge, otherwise you will not have a job the next day. So at this point, it's pretty much, in my opinion, I think it's pretty much the Giants are a done deal to get Aaron Judge because of the comments that the GM made. You can't publicly make those comments and then lose to somebody else in a bidding war after you said you're not going to be outbid for him. And that could actually work in the Yankees' favor, too, because the Yankees can drive up the price on Aaron Judge as much as they want. If he was going to be a $400 million guy, they could make him be a $500 million guy and force the Giants to pay $500 million for him. And if that's the case, the Giants are going to cash strap themselves for many years down the road, and that's something the Yankees can avoid at that point then. I like Aaron Judge, but this was really the first year that he was able to stay healthy. And that's always kind of been the biggest issue with Aaron Judge is he really has never played an entire season because there's always some sort of an injury that he gets, which forces him to miss a month or so of action. I would not be giving him a 7-year deal. There's no way I would, just because he's already going to be 30 years old. He's a guy that's already had an injury history. If you're going to give this guy a 10-year, $400 million deal, can you count on him to be healthy for 6 of those 10 years?
No, because this honestly was the first year he was actually healthy the whole damn season. Could you imagine? I think 7 years would be the max contract I would give him. And if we're talking $400 million at 7 years, man, what a time to be alive in this world! And you know he's going to get a lot of time to supply a copper tone to hang out on the beach, so he didn't get no skin cancer. What a time to be alive! Last question, and then we'll move into the football. Big shot, Rob. Padres. They're going to get Tatis back next year off of that drug suspension enhancing whatever that he faced. They're going to get him back next year. So now you got a pretty decent bullpen. You're going to add another big time back to that rotation. They barely, they missed out, getting to the series in the NLCS. Where do you see the Padres next year once they get Tatis back in the fold?
I see them as a definite playoff contenders. I think they could win the NL West, even though the Dodgers seem to win the NL West every year. But I definitely see the Padres as one of the most dangerous teams in the National League. They could get to the National League Championship Series, possibly get to the World Series with that lineup that they have. And you include the pitching. I definitely see this team as being contenders next year for sure.
What a time to be alive. All right, folks, we're going to get into football real quick. Talk a little NFL, some week 9 takeaways. First of all, since Mr. Karp is here, how do we not bring up the Bills lose to the Jets? I mean, honestly, I think at the beginning of the season, everybody I heard on Facebook, everybody I heard on podcasts, and all around the place was saying, oh, the Bills are in a runaway division. They're going to – and I was screaming the whole time. I was actually screaming Miami. I said if Tua comes out and does Tua and doesn't get hurt, and he can stay healthy, I said Miami's going to give them a run for the money, and he has. When Tua's healthy, Miami Dolphins win. We know they beat him in Buffalo too. And then we get the Jets, and even without, like Mr. Karp was saying, without having Hall, Carter has stepped up. The defense of the Jets has stepped up. Sauce Garner got in the secondary, got 2 picks off of Josh Allen, and we know what Josh Allen means to the Buffalo Bills. I've always said the one thing that's hurting the Buffalo Bills is 2 things right now. Number one is when Josh Allen is your lead running back, you're screwed because your quarterback should never be the quarterback and the RB1. Number 2, if you have no secondary, which we know the Bills secondary has been obliterated by injuries, you're probably going to get burnt. And that's exactly what the Jets have done. That's exactly what other teams have done. So, Mr. Karp, this is your team. And I know we talked about this in the opening statements. But again, man, hey, I think you guys, I don't know if you guys get all the way to the Super Bowl, but certainly you guys are looking pretty damn good. And this is not a runaway division like people thought it was.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a Jets fan right now. I'm as excited to be a Jets fan as I have been in the last 12 years. This is a really solid team that Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh have built on both sides of the football. I mean, the offense is young and explosive, and for the first time in Zach Wilson's young career, he has weapons around him. He has protection on the line, and we can finally see what he's capable of. And then on defense, you have a guy in Sauce Gardner who looks like he's going to be the next big thing in defensive secondaries, and he's awesome and explosive, and he's a fun guy to have on the team. So this is exciting, and this looks like the very beginning of what could be a contending team for the next 5 to 7 years, which is even more exciting.
Absolutely. Gonzo, the next one I wanted to talk about, we talked about this, I know, on the afternoon show. When it comes, we look at the Colts now. Ellinger got sacked 9 times. I know we by the Patriots. We know that obviously the O-line clearly is an issue. They fire Frank Reich. They bring in Jeff Saturday. What is your outlook on your Colts team? Like, how long do you give Saturday? What does Jim Irsay do as your long range plans? And again, is it time? Which to me, the biggest question for you is: it time maybe to tank all the way down to the damn bottom and just say screw it and then start from scratch?
I think Jeff Saturday is going to be there the rest of the season. Because like I said earlier, the worst thing that can happen is we just keep losing, and we're going to get a high draft pick next year, and he's going to hire a new coach. Unless Saturday's just miraculously turns it around, I don't see him getting hired as the next coach anyway. I think this was more. Saturday's been a consultant with the team for the last couple of years. He's been in the locker room some. He knows the team. I think it's more of a cultural thing. Try to keep the team together. And honestly, I think he's having Saturday come in as a set of eyes from the outside and kind of evaluate the team. He can let Irsay know what he thinks is going on. And then I think next year we'll get a new head coach. I'm not sure who that'll be. I have heard some rumors about maybe Jim Harbaugh, which I'd be fine with that if they brought him in. And I think we might get a new GM because, Chris Ballard, I think, has done a good job building the team, but he's also the one responsible for building the team. And we have all this money in our offensive line, and it hasn't performed. So I think that'll be interesting. I think but I know a lot of people have been giving the Colts a hard time and just are mad about the Jeff Saturday thing. But I just think it's a thing where Irsay trusts him, wants him to kind of come in, keep the locker room together until next season where they can go ahead and get a new head coach and try to get things going again. The key is going to be fix the offensive line and then find a quarterback because we haven't been able to find a quarterback since Andrew Luck retired a few years ago after we failed to put an offensive line in front of him to keep him healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second question or a follow-up question on that would be, in 2023, like we said earlier, Sean Payton said with the right organization, he would come out of retirement and take over. I can't imagine the Colts not being a good organization for him to come in and take over. You already got a stud running back. Yeah, you got some things on the offensive line you got to improve upon, but you still got your draft picks. You still got a lot of things in place where he could come into this situation and he could build this team the way he wants to build it. You could do that with the Colts. What do you think about that? Do you think if Sean Payton would come to the Colts and maybe give you guys a facelift?
Oh, I would be fine with Sean Payton coming to the Colts. I think he's wanting to go to maybe a more of a team that's already ready to compete. I think he might end up in Dallas or like maybe with the Chargers where you have Herbert. But you're right with the Colts. If they get the quarterback fixed and the offensive line fixed, they have a good defense. I think we could be a team that could compete. So you never know. I'd be happy if Sean Payton came to the Colts. I'd be real happy.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're in a financial situation, in a draft pick situation that, he could come into your team, bring in a free agent wideout, whatever. Maybe you draft a wideout even in the draft, or maybe you go offensive line in the draft. You got things you can do to right this ship. You're not that far off. You just need a few tweaks left and right. And I think you're back in it. And I think Sean Payton could do that for this team. And y'all guys could be right back in it and be a damn good team. And that would be interesting to see if Sean Payton were to take a look at that. Secondly, Jonah, I'm sorry. I don't want to skip over Stat Guy. Stat Guy, let me ask you this, man. Pack lose to the Lions. I know you're up in that neck of the woods. I know you're up around Bear Country, Vikings Country, Pack Country. I know you're kind of a Vikings guy. Pack lose to the Lions 15-9. Rodgers throws 3 damn interceptions. He comes out and says it's time for this team to dig deeper. Well, how much more deeper can you possibly dig? If you go any further, you're going to wind up in China, maybe Hong Kong. I don't know, but definitely somewhere in that region. How much more can the Packers possibly dig to get right this ship and get back in playoff contention?
They cannot get back in playoff contention, nor will they. You look at their next 3 games, they have Dallas, Tennessee, and Philadelphia. I don't see them winning 3 of those games. I don't see them winning 2 of those games. I could see them beating Tennessee on Thursday night just because it's a short week, but I don't think they beat Dallas, and I don't think they beat Philly. So now you're looking at a team that is 4-8, and if Minnesota goes 1-2 in their next 3 games, Minnesota would go to 8-3. That's a 6-game lead because Minnesota beat Green Bay already once this year, with 6 games left in the regular season. At that point, if you're the Packers, do you not just start Jordan Love the final 6 weeks of the season to see what you have in him? You're not going anywhere this year. You're not going to win the division. You're probably not making the playoffs. At what point do you just say enough is enough and give Jordan Love his shot, because you don't know what you have in him unless you get him out there in game action? And nobody wants to see Rodgers hurt, obviously, in Green Bay, but if you want to get Jordan Love game action, this is the year to do it. It's a rebuild year for the Packers. It's been a rebuild year since – well, I shouldn't say that. It's been a rebuild year since the offseason when they paid him $50 million, when I said that was still the dumbest thing that the Packers could have did was give him $50 million. And now the one thing that everyone doesn't want to hear in Green Bay is Matt LaFleur is being exposed as a head coach. He lost his offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett. He lost his quarterback coach in Luke Getsy, and now look at what that offense looks like. That just goes to show you that Matt LaFleur's record, that just goes to show you that his record was only that good because of the coaches he had put around him. And now that he lost some of that staff, he's been exposed as a head coach this year badly.
Well, definitely. And let's be honest, the biggest thing that happened to the Packers and why they've gone down to where they've gone down was when they lost Devontae Adams. That just took the hearts and soul out of that wide receiving core. I love Lazard. He's on my fantasy team, but Lazard's not Devontae Adams. And when he lost Devontae, and if you know, Devontae and Aaron were synonymous. I mean, these guys were like best friends. They barbecued together. And then when you lost him, that just took something out of the Packers. And now I just think Aaron Rodgers and what he has now, he doesn't believe in. He doesn't believe in Watson. He doesn't believe in, the rest of it. He maybe believes in Randall Cobb because he has a certain loyalty to Randall Cobb, but he doesn't believe in this team anymore. And he looks so disinterested that I just don't, like you said, I don't see them coming out of that. Jonathan, my question is, when you look at another team that's disinteresting is the Raiders. And Devontae Adams said, this Raiders team isn't this bad, but they are. And I think a lot of it has to do with the leadership and bringing in Josh McDaniels to the point where they lost to the Jaguars 27-20. They've only got 2 games under their belt in the win column. How much longer are the Davis family going to go before they say, hey, Josh, it was nice. We give it a shot, but it's just not working, and they let him go. And he goes back to New England and relieves Matt Patricia and Judge Joe out of their offensive play calling duties, and then the Patriots come back to life.
Devontae Adams is either in denial or he's just trying to downplay the fact that his team is terribly bad, because the Raiders are terribly bad. They have been a disappointment, an utter disappointment to start the season. No one saw the Raiders being this bad, or no one envisioned this scenario. The Raiders are a train wreck. A lot of the blame is on the shoulders of Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels, and I said this a while back, he should not have been hired in the first place. I don't even know why he's coaching. He has no clue what he's doing whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, they should have left him in Jacksonville. They shouldn't have let him board the charter flight. They should have made him pay for his own flight to travel back to Vegas, because that was bad. It was another embarrassing showing by the Raiders. And you can't, you can hold. I mean, you could place the blame on Derek Carr all you want. Of course, 90% of the blame always falls on the quarterback. But to me, I'm pointing my finger at coaching. I'm pointing my finger at Josh McDaniels. I can't trust him to be my head coach. This was a bad hire. They should have kept the interim coach that they had before they even considered hiring Josh McDaniels. I think this was a huge mistake. I think the Raiders are paying for it now. They realize that it was a huge mistake. I think Josh McDaniels is one and done. I think he will lose his job at the end of the season. I don't think he'll be the coach next season, because it has been an utter disaster, and this team is in complete disarray.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Hey, I know you got to go do some play-by-play, man. So, stat guy, enjoy the rest of your evening, man. Thanks for being on, brother.
Thanks, Jay.
Hey, real quick, Jonah, let me ask you one question, man. We look at the Seahawks. They're 6-3. They're in first place. Nobody saw this coming from the Seahawks. We already wrote them off as, and Geno Smith off as out for pasture, rebuild, let's recycle and move on. That's not the case for some reason. Apparently, Geno Smith found the fountain of rebornivity, and now he's back. And then you got Walker the third that's running the daylights out of the ball. And all of a sudden, Seattle's sitting on top of first place in their division, which nobody saw. How far do we take Seattle now? Are they legit number one Super Bowl contender, or is this just a facade?
No, I don't think it's a facade. I don't think they're equipped to win the Super Bowl. They have pieces. DK Metcalf is a piece. Tyler Lockett is a piece. Walker's been good. Geno Smith has been unexpectedly great. But this team as a whole, they're more in first place because of circumstances, because the Rams aren't as good as they were last year. The 49ers, they lost Trey Lance earlier this year, and they're just sort of a pedestrian team. This division just isn't all that. And the Seahawks may sneak into the playoffs, maybe winning the NFC West, but I don't think they're going far in the postseason.
Yeah, it's amazing. Honestly, it's amazing what they've done with that team. But I got to be honest with you, when it comes to the Bills, when it comes to the Chiefs, and things of that nature, I am told, and in Miami and things like that, I agree. I don't know if they quite have what it takes to get all the way there, but still, what an incredible achievement given what they had in Geno, or what we thought they had in Geno, and then what they actually had in Geno is amazing. 2 questions left, and we're going to move on to NBA real quick. Is in this season, as we have gotten up to week 9, get ready to go into week 10, what team do you have as your bust? Just give me a team. Jonah, who's your bust so far this year?
In the NFL?
Yes, sir.
The Raiders.
Yes, I like that idea. Jonathan, who's your bust?
The Raiders.
No, actually, I agree with you. I'm actually going with the Raiders.
If you want me to choose another team, I can.
No, I'm not. The bust that I got, I'm going with the Rams. You're Super Bowl champions.
I could have chosen them as well.
Well, and in all honesty, you can go ahead, even though they're I think second place, maybe tied for first with Atlanta. You can throw Tampa Bay in there too. All those guys to me are busts. I mean, it's just the NFL from last year to this year is just. It's almost like somebody took it, flipped it upside down, and this is what we got. It's weird.
Someone stole their magical wands or whatever.
Oh, God, somebody stole something. Hey, real quick, the last one I want to ask you is player-wise. Player-wise. Who do you have player-wise as your bust this season, Jonah?
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah, that is a tough question. I'm thinking about my fantasy team. Can I say my entire fantasy team is a bust?
Yeah, because I'll throw mine in there with you. Go ahead.
I'll say my fantasy player, or my player that's been a bust this year, has been definitely Russell Wilson. I would definitely go with Russell Wilson.
Why does your thing not? Never mind. I'm sorry, Rob. I apologize. I thought you had left. So who do you have as your bust team?
My bust team would probably be the Rams. I mean they're the defending Super Bowl champions. They've been struggling.
And
yeah,
I don't think you're gonna be wrong.
I would say the Rams,
Raiders, Bucks. Shit, they're all crap.
Bucks too.
The Chargers.
The Chargers, but
Chargers. Rob Scott, I like that. Akers is How do you go from being the running back of your Super Bowl team, and now they're trying to trade you? Oh, wait a minute, they couldn't trade you, so now they're going to throw you back in the lineup. Oh my God, talk about yesterday leftovers. That should be in the back of his jersey.
He's clearly just
I'm gonna put this out there. Cam Akers or Los Angeles Rams. I want yesterday's leftovers on the back of Cam Akers' jersey. That's what I want on there, because that's why they're treating him like yesterday's leftovers. Man, what a time!
Yeah.
But real quick, you know who I got as the biggest bust? Can we just say Cincinnati O-line? Can I just put the whole O-line of the Cincinnati Bengals as a bust? Because this was supposed to, quote unquote, be a revamped offensive line.
It really was supposed to be, but it just hasn't panned out.
Hey, I'll tell you what. Hey, you know who else didn't pan out? Hey, you know who else didn't pan out? Najee Harris, the Pittsburgh Steelers running back. That he didn't pan out either.
Nope, not at all.
As far as the Cincinnati O-line is concerned, you don't build an entire offensive line in one offseason. And this was a terrible line last year. I mean, Joe Burrow was
it was horrible.
Joe Burrow was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. You don't build it to be one of the upper echelon O-lines in one season. That doesn't happen. And Cam Akers is a good pick, but I'd say Aaron Rodgers is the biggest bust in the NFL.
Oh, God, I love that too.
Yeah.
Jesus. If I was a woman, I would marry Jonah because I love that answer. That is a great answer.
And that's true because this past weekend on Sunday, he reverted to bad habits. I mean, he was throwing interceptions in the red zone. It was terrible.
Let me ask you guys a question. Who was the bigger problem for Aaron Rodgers? I blame his barber. I don't know if you watched Aaron Rodgers lately, but when Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl, he had a nice, normal, regular haircut, right? Whatever it was a regular haircut. And then he goes to this Nicolas Cage look, right? He's got this long hair. He's got this beard, whatever. And then he shaves it underneath, almost like he went like a gothic look. And now he's just in the toilet. I blame the barber. Can we find the barber and talk to him? They need to bring the barber in and say, you know what? You're not allowed to touch Aaron's hair any longer at all. We're going to find the right barber for him. I'm just saying,
I blame his attitude. I think he's been brought back to earth because of his arrogance and his cockiness, and he is unwilling to be a mentor to those young receivers. He's going to have to be if they want to turn it around. But you know what, Jay? It's too late to turn it around. Their season's done.
Aaron was all about Aaron. He was never going to help Jordan Love out. He basically was a smart guy. He didn't say nothing about it. He didn't pull a Ryan Tannehill. Like Ryan Tannehill just came out and told you, hey, look, I'm not helping Malik. Malik is on his own. I don't care. Rodgers was a little bit more diplomatic. He just stayed quiet but didn't help. It is what it is. Hey, we're going to move on real quick to this NBA. 5 takeaways from Week 10. Actually, not NBA. I'm sorry. I apologize. It's NCAA football. 5 takeaways from Week 10. I'm just going to give you the real quick, skinny. The new lineup for the rankings has come out. I think about an hour ago. But I know it's going to be something of the nature. I'm just going to give you the first 10 because that's really all I care about. And that's UGA, Ohio, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee, Oregon, LSU, USC, UCLA, Bama, Ole Miss, and Clemson. Those are your – actually, I gave you 12. Those are your 12. I'll be honest with you. This is the first time I think that the rankings are actually accurate. I think Georgia, with their win over Tennessee, clearly is the number one. And I will tell you right now, I'm the first guy to tell you, I really had Tennessee beating Georgia. I really thought 100% Tennessee was the number one. But Georgia came out and said differently. And, Ohio did what Ohio did. We still got the Ohio-Michigan at the end of the season. So it still remains to see if Ohio can hold on to the number 2 spot or can Michigan grab it from them. But the biggest team that I'm happy to see finally in the top 4 is TCU. They deserve it. Max Duggan, the quarterback, deserves it. What a time to be alive. So I got some questions. We're going to go top down real quick. Big Shot Rob, TCU, highest ranking since 2017. All I want to know is they are currently sitting in the number 4 spot. Are they a legitimate title contender for the title? Can they get to the title?
Yes. Yes, they can.
And I think they've been. What percentage do you have them winning the title?
For them to win the title, I would say, damn, it's tough. Maybe 50%.
I gave them 30. You gave them what?
50.
Okay.
I gave
Yeah,
him
I
50
gave
only because
about
some
30%.
of the other
I
teams
think
in
they get
there
about 30%.
had more experience, definitely more experience. Georgia
Yeah.
has the experience. Ohio State has the experience. Michigan has the experience. So, yeah, they're kind of looked at as the underdogs, but I think if they get into the playoffs, they can definitely make some noise.
Yeah, absolutely. My question now for Jonah. Look, Bama now is sitting at number 10. We haven't seen Alabama at number 10 since 2015. Saban is probably just sitting in his office saying, how the hell did I get here? This is unfamiliar territory for me. At what point do you think Bama can get back to the top 4? Because we still got to play the SEC showdown. Can Bama get back to the top 4, or are they just done?
No, Bama has 2 losses this year. It's not happening. I mean, SEC country is built differently. This is not as top heavy as it has been in years past with just Bama and Georgia. I mean, you throw Tennessee in the mix, and this is a real tough conference this year. And Bama losing 2 games this year has proven that. They're not getting back there this season. Maybe next year. I mean, they always end up with a top 3 recruiting class when it's all said and done. So this dynasty under Nick Saban isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But as far as this year is concerned, it's a wash.
Yeah, again, I definitely agree with you. Follow-on question before I go to Jonathan. Follow-on question to that. Where does Bama get ranked next year? Because we always see when Bama loses, we saw Georgia win the national title, but yet Bama gets the number 1 spot the next year in the top 10. Where do you see Bama in the pre-rankings coming out next year?
I think he's muted. I don't know.
That's for Jonah. That was for Jonah. Jonah,
Oh,
did
for
you?
me? Oh,
Yeah, I said follow-on question, Jonah.
Oh,
Hey,
follow.
Jonah.
I
Hey,
thought
Jonah,
you
back
said
there watching
Jonathan.
that TV screen, sipping on some Hennessy. Listen, Jonah,
yeah.
I want to know every year,
Yes.
even when Alabama doesn't win, which we saw Georgia win last year, every year they put them still at the number 1 spot. Where do you see Georgia, at the number 10 spot, no matter where they may finally end up at the end of the year? Where do you see Bama getting ranked next year?
Well, I think a lot.
5, top 10.
I think a lot of it depends on where they end up when this season is over. If they can crawl back to a top 6 spot, they could easily be ranked in the top 4. I think Georgia is going to end up as the number 1 team at the end of this season. They'll be the number 1 team going into next season. I think there's a good chance Tennessee will be ranked higher than Alabama going into next season. But I'd assume Bryce Young is leaving unless he wants another redemption year. This was supposed to be his redemption year.
It was.
I would imagine he's leaving. So who knows what this team is going to end up looking like in 2023, but they'll be a top 5 team.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Jonathan, hey, look, man, Georgia's sitting at the top spot. The team I thought could beat Georgia was Tennessee. Clearly, that didn't happen. Is there any team now in the rankings that you think could beat Georgia, or does Georgia just get the national title in a back-to-back campaign?
If we learned anything this weekend, Georgia faced one of the toughest teams in the SEC, and that was Tennessee, and they are still the best team in college football. I don't know, Jay. I don't think anyone can beat this Georgia team right now. Defense wins games. I know that's an old cliche. And the Bulldogs, they remain the team to beat. After commanding 27-13 win over number 1 Tennessee, they literally held Heisman hopeful in Hendon Hooker. They didn't let him do much of anything. I think the stage with the game being in Georgia, I think the stage was a little bit too big for Hendon Hooker. He had to go on the road. He had to try to, take his team down the field in a hostile territory. It was a bit too much for him. And I think this game here, it doesn't only impact his Heisman chances, but what it also does, it slides his team down a little bit more, and it makes it more known that Georgia is the team to beat, and Georgia remains at the top of, college football's mountaintop. And I just don't see anyone surpassing them. I just think they're too good of a team. They're a powerhouse team. They're well coached. Kirby Smart is a defensive specialist. He understands defense better than anybody else, it seems. And this team just doesn't let up. And then they had a walk-on quarterback that is poised and shows up in big moments and makes plays. It's incredible. This Georgia team, to me, is the most complete team in college football. And I think if there's one team that can win it back-to-back, and they've proven it, it's them.
Yeah, I've never really been a big Stetson Bennett fan. I mean, I'm a UT guy. I'm a University of Texas. My whole family graduated, with the exception of my sister and my wife. My whole family graduated from Texas. I'm a Texas guy, tried and true. But I'll tell you, man, listen, this is how I see a couple of things. Number one, LSU, hey, they grew up. This team has grown up under Brian Kelly. This team has grown up. They beat the big dog. They beat the Bama. And now it's like to beat Bama is not even a big deal anymore. That's how bad Bama is. The fact that they've been smacked around like the stepchild this year, I mean, Nick Saban's got to be like contemplating, you know what, let me just go on ahead and take my 7, championship and go to the golf course and relax. But again, I think LSU grew up in the rankings. It was a great week of amazing upsets. TCU over Texas Tech, LSU over Bama, Georgia over Tennessee, Texas over 13-ranked Kansas State. Notre Dame, for crying out loud, comes from the depth of the bile of hell and unranked teams and takes out freaking Clemson, for crying out loud. I mean, I don't know how much better it gets in a week of football. Baseball. Speaking on baseball, do you know the College World Series was the second least watched World Series Game 6 in the history of the World Series? And I told him, baseball's got issues. I don't know why you're going to put the World Series Game 6 when you got Clemson, Alabama, and all these other great university teams going at it. It's just ridiculous. Yes, it's going to pull away from your viewership. Baseball's got problems. Baseball has to revamp their schedule, their marketing. They got to do a lot of things if they want to make baseball, America's pastime again. Baseball really's got a lot of things to look at, but that's neither here nor there. My last thing,
Jay,
you
bring up a good point. You bring up a good point. One of the issues is that the damn season's too long.
Baseball's got a lot of things to work out, but again, I think their marketing is terrible. I think their scheduling around other events, especially when it comes to the World Series, is terrible. Baseball's got a lot of things to really look at, and if I'm the commish or whoever votes on keeping the commish, these are things I'm looking at coming into next season on how they can fix it and bring baseball back to the prominence of the forefront. Because right now, baseball is probably the number 3 sport watched in the U.S. behind the NFL and the NBA for various reasons.
Even hockey.
No, seriously, Heisman watch.
Maybe even hockey.
Man, I think they're still above hockey and soccer. Let's not go that far. But no, seriously, hey, the last thing about colleges, I do want to talk, and Jonathan, you kind of briefly mentioned the Heisman. I want to talk a little about the Heisman watch. Hooker is my original Heisman favorite. Obviously, they took the loss to Georgia. He had 195 yards, a pick, and 17 rushing. Terrible, terrible, terrible game when you're going up against the number 3 Georgia Bulldogs. Of course, you have Stetson Bennett in there, 257, 2 touchdowns, 13 yards rushing, a rushing touchdown. Stetson looked pretty good. You had C.J. Stroud, 76 yards, 79 yards on the ground. Terrible, terrible, terrible performance from C.J. Stroud. Even though Ohio got the win, still crappy performance from him. But then you have Young from Alabama that gives you 328 on the ground, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and rushes for 10. But then you got my boy Dugan, who gives you 195 for TCU, 2 touchdowns. But again, the guy that I think should get the Heisman now, but probably won't get the Heisman because he doesn't play the tough, quote-unquote, SEC competition, is the guy out of North Carolina, May, when he could have 293, 2 touchdowns, and he rushed for 74, and he grabbed a touchdown. Who would if I could vote on him, I would vote on May. I don't think May's going to get there only because of the teams that he plays. So I still kind of lean towards Hooker being the leading candidate for the Heisman. Who would you guys' candidate for the Heisman be if you had to vote today? Big shot, Rob.
Yeah, that's a tough one because I haven't really been paying attention too much to all these guys. So I haven't really been following the games too much as far as watching the games. So I can't really give you an answer to that right now.
Yeah, that's okay. If you want to piggyback off greatness, just say Hooker. We'll accept it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Jonah, who would be your Heisman right now if you had to vote on a Heisman? Who would be your Heisman?
You know, a lot like Big Shot Rob, I have not really been watching a ton of college football outside of UConn this year. So it's funny, I'm doing a quick Google search to see everybody, all the favorites who are listed right now and who might be in contention. Hooker is a good choice. I'm not qualified to cast a vote at the moment based on my lack of knowledge, but I'll piggyback off you. I'll say Hooker.
When do you guys take open resumes to your radio station? I need a new job. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, Jonah. We love you. Jonathan, you get one crack at it. I don't want to hear 15 people. I don't want to hear an epilogue. I don't want to hear a dissertation or a thesis or anything else you may have in the back of your mind. I need within a paragraph, that paragraph being 3 sentences, who do you have for your Heisman?
My Heisman favorite right now, after his performance this weekend, is Bo Nix out of Oregon.
Okay.
Big numbers.
That's another. Okay, I'll accept that. Bo Nix.
All right.
All right, you're in the book. Hey, listen, you are in the books for Bo Nix. I'm not going to argue that is a good choice as well. All right, folks, we're going to close this show out with Kyrie being suspended 5 games. Listen, guys, again, this Nets team, I mean, honestly, I don't know how much more dysfunction you could put into one franchise, but between Kevin Durant's issues with Nash being fired, and then you got Kyrie with anti-Semitic supporting and a book written about the Holocaust not even being a thing. I don't know how much more Kyrie can say that would make us think, oh my God, this guy literally thinks the world is flat. Yes, Kyrie Irving said the world is flat. I don't know how much more you want to put into that, but Kyrie Irving, the thing about Kyrie, and the thing that kind of bothers me a little bit about it, I'm going to get you guys thought process on this, is currently unfit to be associated with the Brooklyn Nets. That's what the governor, Joe Tsai, the owner of the Nets, has said. So if he's not apologetic, now he did issue an apology at like 1 o'clock in the morning, midnight, when barely, like Pride said on the afternoon show, barely anybody was even there to see it, other than maybe the 1 or 2 guys that caught it on Twitter or whatever, and then it became viral after that. But he did it at a time when most people are in bed sleeping and doing their midnight business, and then he comes out and apologizes. Kyrie, come on. What are you thinking? How do you even take that as a sincere apology for the things that you support? And so for that reason, I'm wondering, is 5 games really enough if the Brooklyn Nets ownership said currently he is unfit to be associated with the Brooklyn Nets? So you think 5 days later, given the lack of empathy for what he has said, is going to make a damn difference? Big shot, Rob. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Kyrie's been under so much controversy. I would guess it's enough. And if he apologizes and gets his head right and starts focusing more on basketball and worrying about whatever's going on with the rest of the world. I mean, you could have your own opinions and think whatever you want, but the main thing is you're getting paid to play the game of basketball. I know he lost endorsements and all that other stuff, but the main thing is you're a basketball player. You're known as a basketball player, so you need to focus on playing basketball. And whatever you want to do outside of that is fine, but I would just try to keep all that other stuff private. You don't need to be doing all this other stuff. Just focus on basketball. Get this Nets team together and right. You guys are trying to get a playoff spot this year and be contenders. That's what I would be focusing on during the season.
And I do want to point out, Rob Scott does bring a valid point. He has 5 or 6 stipulations that he has to complete before he can come back anyway. And the last one being he has to meet with the owner, Joe Tsai, talk about what he's learned and how he plans basically to do better. And a couple of things that he has to do is I think he has to go to I think he has to go to I hope I said this word correctly, Semitism training, where he has to learn about the things of being in the Jewish community and things like that to be less offensive. I mean, he's got to do at least 2 or 3 different classes and programs before he can even meet with ownership group to show that what he said and did and explain that what he did wasn't a hurtful way to get back on the team. So with that being said, 6 things have to be met, 5 games away. Jonah, is it enough?
When I first heard about that, my reaction was they don't expect him to meet all 6 levels of expectation, all 6 stipulations. That was my first reaction. He's going to not do one of them, and that's going to give them reason to let him go. Or they're going to part ways in some other fashion. The fact of the matter is, when the owner of a basketball team calls out one of his players and calls him unfit to be in their organization, that to me is the line in the sand. You're calling out somebody's character, and a person's character doesn't change with 5 days of unpaid leave.
Right.
That person's character is who they are. They've shown their true colors. Kyrie has shown his true colors. You called him unfit to be in your organization. That's the line in the sand. You drew it. As far as I'm concerned, he's played his last game in a Nets uniform.
Yeah, and I'm totally in agreement with you, to the point where, Jonathan, my follow-up question or a caveat or a build-up off of what Jonah just talked about, when you look at Kyrie, if he's unable to meet those expectations, those 6 expectations, the last one being meeting with the owner and basically saying, hey, Joe, I met all the classes. I went to all the classes. This is what I learned from those classes in relation to the endorsement that I gave to that book and how it affected people. Is Kyrie, because look, I don't know if you watched the initial unapologetic press conference that Kyrie held, but it was horrible. And Jonathan, I know you watched it. I know you did. And I know you saw him when he said, I'm the beacon of light. Well, for a guy who doesn't believe the Holocaust happened, number one, and as I raised my hand as a guy who walked through Dachau and a guy that walked through Auschwitz and a guy that sat in the shower chamber that they told the Jews was there for them to take a shower only to become the actual death chamber. And instead, out of the nozzles coming water, came out the gas into the empty cellar room next to the left, where I asked my friend, I said, what is up with this empty room? There's no placards. There's no nothing. It's just 4 walls and a door. And he said, well, Jay, look up. And I looked up, and there was a little tag that said, this is where 25,000 bodies were stacked and burned. I was in the burn room, and I didn't realize I was in the burn room. And I'm just telling you, for a guy that's walked through 2 different prison camps, for a guy to say that he thinks that the Holocaust didn't happen, he's going to have to really take those classes 100% serious. And then he's going to have to come up with a real, genuine answer to Joe's side. And if he's really a genuine person, he'll make a statement to the world saying, I attended classes, I did my homework, I did my research. I understand that the stance and the endorsement of a book that I should have taken an endorsement of, I now understand fully where I hurt a large segment of the population of this world. I take accountability and ownership for what I did. Do you think, number one, Kyrie can do that? And number two, if he can't do that, is there another basketball team out there in the NBA that will take a chance on Kyrie Irving?
Those are a lot of stipulations, Jay, for a guy
A lot.
who seemed very defiant, who seemed very combative during that press conference. I listened to that whole press conference, and he was clearly unapologetic, as if he did nothing wrong. This is a guy who doesn't have the strength nor the audacity to man up about it, to take his responsibility. You know, this is a guy who doesn't hold himself accountable. So if he doesn't do those things, if he doesn't hold himself accountable, then what makes you think he's going to meet these stimulations? And I think stipulations, and I think the Nets know that. And I think this is a way for the Nets to say, goodbye, Kyrie Irving. We no longer need your services.
Right.
You can move on with your life. Thank you for everything you did for our team. We know how damn talented you are, but we no longer need your headache anymore. So I think that's what the Nets are trying to. That's the message that the Nets are trying to send here. And yes, to answer your second question, I think he will end up on a team, because let's not forget, even though this guy has character issues, like a number of these players do, he still can ball. Okay, when he's on his game, and when he's playing at such a high level, he's nearly unstoppable. We all know what the man can do on the basketball court. The man has sick handles.
Nobody's going to question. That's what the problem. Nobody's going to question what Kyrie can or cannot do on the court.
Right, what he can bring to a team. So I think, to answer your second question, I think another team out there will take a chance on him. I think the bigger question is, who is that team and why?
Yeah. And what will it impact the amount of money? How much of a deduction salary will this cost him?
Right.
Interesting.
Exactly.
So we already know sponsors have left to a certain degree. Now, what's next for Kyrie, right? Sometimes you just don't know when to be quiet and just, I don't want to say play basketball, but sometimes you got to know if you're going to say something and you're in a business and you got endorsements, that even though we live in a world of freedom of speech, well, freedom of speech comes with, great responsibility. And with that great responsibility comes great consequences if what you say is not in alignment with how most of the free world speaks. It is what it is. All right, folks. Hey, last but not least, we're going to get into some final thoughts, and then we out at 5,000. Rob Scott, please give me your final thoughts, brother.
You mean Rob Strike, man. Yeah.
I know, damn it. I got too many Robs in my name.
Yeah,
Big shot, Rob.
I just wanted to say, I just wanted to say congratulations to the Astros again winning the World Series. Baseball season's officially over. We're right in the middle of football season. Week 10 coming up, so football's at the halfway point now, where the NBA is just getting started. So it's still definitely an exciting time to be a sports fan. And I'm looking forward to definitely the ending of football season and what happens with basketball as well.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, man, we got a lot of sports, right? We got basketball, football, hockey. I mean, there's a lot of things still going on in the world, man, to keep us busy for sure. Jonathan, man, hey, give me your final thoughts, brother. And it better start off with all hail the Houston Astros.
All hail the Houston Astros. If that makes you happy, if that satisfies
it does.
you,
I'm not gonna lie to you. My heart literally tickles when you say that.
And congratulations to your team, Jay. Congratulations. I mean that wholeheartedly. They deserve it. They won it. What more can I say about the Houston Astros?
Hey,
Now,
Jonathan,
to
I have a
get
quick
on to
question
my
for you.
final thought.
Hey, there's
Yes.
only one shortstop, Jonathan. One shortstop in all of Major League Baseball of the past 100 years that won the Gold Glove as a rookie. Could you please say his name?
You're gonna put me on the spot.
It's not hard.
I know. Jeremy
If you're
Pena.
a sports guy, it shouldn't be hard. Let me help you out. I'm gonna help you out. Let me help you out. It's Jeremy Pena.
Yep. And
Yeah.
he was well deserving of it. He had some big
It
hits
was
and clutch
Jeremy
moments.
Pena.
He had some big hits and clutch moments. The moment wasn't too big for the guy. You know, he stepped up when his team needed him the most and came up with some big hits and did his thing.
Absolutely. And before I turn the mic over to my beloved guest, Jeremy, or I say Jeremy, Jesus Christ.
Oh, Jay, can I tell the people where they can find me real quick?
Clark. Well, I tell you what,
Find me
I'm
real
having a rough night. Hey, hold on. I just want to say, if you looked at the World Series, this World Series, man, it was a ton of history-making moments between the no-hitter, Jeremy Pena, you know, and what he did as a rookie. I mean, it's just flooded with historical moments in this World Series. And I challenge you to Google those historical moments. I think you'll be surprised. But last but not least, from FOX61, Jonah Karp. I'm going to get this correct. Jonah Karp, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Number one, for giving us your time, because I know your time is valuable. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, number one, to be on the show. And number two, I hope that you'll come back on again and give us some more insights.
Well, thank you for inviting me on, Jay. I had a great time.
We should bring
absolutely.
Jonah on our show too. Gunzo and the Judge Sports Talk. That'd be awesome.
Hey, and what time does that show come on?
Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. Pacific time, 11 p.m. Eastern time.
And there you have it, folks. All right, man. Hey, listen, I appreciate Big Shot Rob, and I appreciate Jonathan Mathis taking time out of their day, but mostly, and I really do appreciate our special guest, Jonah Karp, FOX61. Jonah, is there any other way outside of FOX61 and Hartford, Connecticut, that these guys can find you? Is there anything else you do or tweet or whatever that they can follow you on?
Well, I'm on TV just about every night on FOX61 in Hartford. But you could catch me on Twitter at Jonah Karp TV. Yeah, that's about the only other platform, but I'll go ahead and plug that. Sure.
Hey, FOX61. Everybody has a computer. You can always Google it.
Yep.
Jonah Karp, FOX61. Jonah, I do want you to come back on the show, man. And again, thank you so much for your time. And hey, that's all we got. Y'all have a good night. We out of here.